My name is Sarah Holloway. I am 32 years old. 3 months ago, I was walking my dog along the trail behind our neighborhood, the same trail I had walked 100 times before when someone pushed me off the ledge. I fell 20 feet onto the rocks below. By the time the paramedics arrived, I had stopped breathing twice. I went through 4 surgeries in 6 days. And when I finally woke up, a detective was standing at the foot of my hospital bed with a folder in his hand. He looked at me and said, "Miss Holloway, this was not a hiking accident." I remember staring at the ceiling for a long moment, trying to understand what those words meant. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Because when I finally learned who did it, I couldn't even cry. I just went completely numb. Before I tell you everything, please like this video and subscribe to Holloway Stories. And drop a comment below, tell me where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to where this all began. That Saturday morning started the way every Saturday morning did. I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat on the back porch, listening to the birds. My dog, Biscuit, a 3-year-old golden retriever with more energy than sense, was already at the door, spinning in circles, ready to go. I laughed at him and told him to calm down. I remember that moment very clearly. The sunlight coming through the trees, the smell of the coffee, the feeling that everything was fine. I got dressed, clipped Biscuit's leash, and headed out toward the Millbrook Trail. It was about a 1.5-mile loop through the woods, ending at a ridge with a beautiful view of the valley below. I had done it probably 300 times since moving to that neighborhood 4 years ago. It was my reset button. Whenever work got overwhelming or I needed to think, I went to that trail. My husband had offered to come with me that morning. He was still half asleep, leaning against the doorframe with his coffee, squinting at me. "You sure you don't want company?" he said. I told him to go back to bed. I kissed him on the cheek and told him I'd be back in an hour. I had no idea that within 40 minutes, I would be lying broken on a pile of rocks 20 feet below the ridge. The trail was quiet that morning. I only passed one other person, an older man walking a small terrier early on, and then the path opened up and I was alone. Biscuit pulled ahead of me on his leash, nose to the ground, happy in his world. I remember thinking about a project I had at work, turning ideas over in my mind. Normal thoughts, small thoughts. The kind you have when life feels manageable. We reached the ridge at the top of the trail. It's a wide, flat ledge, maybe 6 feet deep, with a wooden railing along the drop side. I walked up to the railing, looked out at the valley, and took a breath. The morning light was gold and soft. I remember thinking it was beautiful. Then I felt 2 hands on my back. Hard, fast. No warning at all. I didn't even have time to turn around. I went over the railing like I weighed nothing. For a half second, I was in the air. I remember seeing the sky, and then I hit the rocks below, and everything went white. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I came back, it was in pieces. A flash of pain so big it didn't feel like pain. It felt like my whole body had become pain. The sound of Biscuit barking somewhere above me, frantic. The cold of the stone against my face. Then voices, someone had heard the dog and come running. A woman's voice saying, oh my God," over and over. A man's voice on a phone, giving our location. And then I was gone again. My husband told me what happened next. He got the call while he was still in his pajamas. He drove to the hospital so fast he got a speeding ticket on the way and didn't even notice. When he arrived, they wouldn't let him into the trauma bay. He stood in the hallway for 2 hours while they worked on me. He called my sister and my mother. He paced that hallway until the floor probably knew the shape of his shoes. When they finally let him see me, I was unconscious, wrapped in bandages, connected to machines. The surgeon told him I had broken 3 ribs, fractured my pelvis, had a severe concussion, and damaged my spleen. They had repaired internal bleeding. There was a long list of things they had fixed and a shorter list of things they were still watching. He told my husband it was going to be a long road. My husband didn't leave the hospital. Not that night, not the next day. My mother and my sister took turns coming and going, bringing him food he barely touched. But he stayed in that waiting area, sleeping in a chair, keeping his phone charged, waiting. My mother told me later that she had never seen a person look so scared in her life. On the third day, I woke up. It was slow, like coming up from very deep water. The first thing I heard was the hum of a machine. The first thing I felt was my husband's hand around mine. The first thing I saw, when I forced my eyes open against the light, was his face unshaved, exhausted, eyes red, but watching me with an expression I will never forget as long as I live. "Hey," he whispered. His voice broke on that one word. "Hey," I managed. He put his forehead down on the edge of the bed and cried. Over the next 2 days, the picture came together slowly. My mother told me what the doctors had said. My husband filled in the gaps. And then, on the 5th day, Detective Renee Walsh came to my room. She was a calm woman, methodical, with the kind of face that doesn't give much away. She sat down across from me and asked me to describe what I remembered from the moment before the fall. I told her everything. The railing, the view, the 2 hands. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Then she said, "We've reviewed the trail camera footage from the Park Service camera installed at the trailhead last fall." She paused. "Miss Holloway, someone followed you up that trail. They were approximately 3 minutes behind you. The camera caught them entering the trail right after you." My heart started beating strangely. "Did you see who it was?" I asked. She opened her folder. "The footage is partially obstructed by the tree cover," she said. "But we were able to identify the vehicle in the parking lot. It belongs to someone in your immediate circle." I stared at her. "Who?" I said. She looked at me carefully, the way people look at you when they're about to say something they know is going to hurt. "We'd like to do a bit more work before we name anyone officially," she said. "But I want you to know this is being treated as a criminal investigation. This was not an accident." She left. And I lay there in that hospital bed with the machines beeping softly around me, trying to think of everyone I knew who drove a car, and feeling a cold, quiet terror spreading through me. My family's reaction when they found out it was intentional was immediate and loud. My brother-in-law, my husband's older brother, pointed the finger at my husband within the first hour. He pulled Detective Walsh aside in the hallway, and I could hear him through the door, his voice tight and controlled, laying out reasons. My husband had been alone that morning. My husband was the beneficiary of my life insurance policy. My husband had seemed, in his opinion, suspiciously calm since the accident. I heard all of it, and something inside me went cold in a different way. That night, my husband came into my room and sat beside me, and I watched his face. I thought about the 2 hands on my back. I thought about how well I knew his hands. I thought about 14 years together. We started dating in college, married at 26. I thought about every morning he had made me coffee, and every night he had talked me through my anxiety, and every time he had chosen me, quietly and without drama, just chosen me. No, I thought. No. It isn't him. But doubt is a poison. Even when you know something isn't true, once someone puts the thought there, it sits in the room with you and doesn't leave. I hated that I felt it at all. I hated that I was looking at his hands. I hated every second of it. The next morning, Detective Walsh came back. This time she had a colleague with her. They sat down and told me they needed to bring my husband in for formal questioning. Standard procedure, they said. He was not under arrest, but they needed to talk to him. He stood up from the chair beside my bed. He looked at me before he left. Not at the detectives, not at the door. At me. "I did not do this," he said. Quietly. Simply. The way people say things when there's no performance in it, when it's just the truth coming out with nowhere else to go. "I know," I said. They took him out of the room. The door closed. And I was alone with the beeping machines and the morning light coming through the blinds and a rage building inside me that I had never felt before in my life. Not at my husband. At whoever had done this. Whoever had pushed me off that ledge and then let my husband sit in a police station because of it. I decided then that I was going to find out who it was. Whether anyone helped me or not. Over the next several days, as my body slowly began to heal, my mind was working. I asked my mother to bring me my laptop. I started going back through everything, every person who had access to my life, my schedule, my routines. I thought about who knew I walked that trail on Saturday mornings. I thought about who would have a reason to want me gone. The thing about motive is that it narrows the list fast. 3 years ago, my father passed away. He left behind a house, some savings, and a small piece of commercial property on the edge of town that had been in our family for 2 generations. He divided everything equally between me and my sister, Clara. The property especially had become complicated. A developer had approached us about buying it, and the offer was significant more money than either of us had ever seen at one time. I had been hesitant. My father loved that property. I wanted to think carefully before selling. Clara had been impatient. She wanted to sell immediately, take the money, and move on. We had argued about it not terribly, not to the point of screaming, but firmly, with real tension underneath. She felt I was being sentimental. I felt she was being hasty. We had agreed, eventually, to table the discussion for 6 months and revisit it. That conversation had happened 2 months before I was pushed off the ledge. I lay in that hospital bed and I tried very hard not to think about Clara. She was my sister. She had been in my wedding. She had held my hand through 2 miscarriages. She had cried at the hospital when I was brought in. I had watched her cry. But I could not stop a question from forming, slow and terrible, in the back of my mind. If I died, what happened to my half of the property? I didn't want to know the answer, but I needed to. My mother was the one who found out, quietly, by calling the family attorney while I was sleeping one afternoon. She came back into the room and sat down and didn't say anything for a long time. I watched her face. "Mom," I said, "tell me." She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at the window. Then she looked at me. "If you had died," she said, "without updating your will, which you haven't done since before the property situation changed, your share would have passed to your husband. And if he was also gone or charged with something," she paused, "it reverts to the remaining family." "To Clara," I said. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I felt something fall away inside me. Some last hope I had been holding onto, that this was random, that it was a stranger, that there was some other explanation. It fell away, and what was left underneath was a grief so heavy I couldn't speak for several minutes. My sister. My little sister, 3 years younger than me, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms when we were small. Who I had driven to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when she had that allergic reaction in college, who stood beside me at our father's grave and held my hand. She had put her hands on my back and pushed me off a cliff. I couldn't breathe. I pressed the call button for the nurse because I thought something was wrong with my heart, that something had actually broken, but it was just the grief moving through my body with nowhere to go. When the nurse left, my mother and I sat in silence. And then slowly, carefully, we started talking about what to do. I did not go to the detective first. I needed to be sure. I needed something more than motive and timing and property law. I needed to hear it, or see it, or find it somewhere real. My mother came up with the idea. She was the one who had always been close with Clara's husband, my brother-in-law Derek. They talked on the phone sometimes. He trusted her. My mother called him and said she needed to speak with him privately, that she was struggling to understand what had happened and needed family around her. He agreed to meet her for coffee. My mother is not a dramatic person. She has never raised her voice in an argument a day in her life. But she loves her children with a fierceness that is quiet and absolute. And in that coffee shop, she sat across from Derek with her phone in her cardigan pocket, recording, and she talked to him gently, asking about everything, circling slowly, the way you circle something you're afraid to look at directly. And Derek, who was nervous, who had clearly been carrying something heavy, he started talking. He didn't confess outright, but he said things. He said Clara had been under a lot of financial pressure lately, things my mother didn't know about, a business deal that had gone wrong, credit card debt that had stacked up without him realizing. He said she had become obsessed with the property sale over the past several months. He said he had noticed her driving out on Saturday mornings without explanation a few weeks before my accident, and that when he asked where she had been, she gave him different answers that didn't quite add up. He said that after my accident, something changed in her. She seemed relieved and then frightened, and she had asked him twice in the past week if he thought the police were going to find anything. He said all of this thinking he was unburdening himself to a grieving mother-in-law. He had no idea what he was handing her. My mother brought the recording to me that evening. She played it, and we both listened without speaking. When it finished, she looked at me. "Is this enough?" she asked. "Yes," I said. We called Detective Walsh the next morning. What happened after that moved faster than I expected. The detective took the recording. They pulled Clara's phone records. They found that she had downloaded a satellite map of the Millbrook Trail 3 weeks before my accident. They found a text message she had sent to a friend, carefully worded, nothing explicit, but asking about what happens to property if someone dies without updating their will. They found that her car had been parked at the Millbrook Trailhead at 7:48 that Saturday morning, 6 minutes after I had entered the trail. 2 weeks after I gave Detective Walsh the recording, my sister was arrested. Derek cooperated with the police immediately. He had suspected something after their conversations, but hadn't wanted to believe it. He told investigators everything he knew and everything he had put together in the weeks since my accident. He was not charged. I was home by then, recovering in my own house, when my mother called to tell me Clara had been taken in. I sat down on the edge of the bed and held the phone and stared at the carpet. My husband sat beside me and didn't. He just put his hand on my back gently, nothing like those other hands, and stayed there. Clara pleaded not guilty initially, but the evidence was extensive. The phone records, the location data, the text messages, the trail camera footage that investigators had enhanced with better software and now clearly showed a figure in a gray jacket, the same jacket found in Clara's closet, entering the trail behind me. In the end, she changed her plea. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison for attempted murder. I sat in that courtroom and watched them lead her out. She turned once and looked at me. I still don't know what she was looking for in my face. Forgiveness? Maybe. Or understanding. Or just to see, one last time, whether I was still the person she had grown up with. I looked back at her. I didn't look away, but I had nothing to give her that she hadn't already taken from me. After the sentencing, my husband drove us home. It was a gray afternoon, the sky the color of old wool. We didn't talk much. There wasn't a lot to say that the last several months hadn't already said for us. When we got inside, Biscuit was at the door, spinning his circles, entirely unbothered by the weight of everything that had happened, just overjoyed that we were home. I got down on the floor and let him climb into my lap, and I held onto that ridiculous, soft, warm dog and finally cried the way I had been needing to cry for months. My husband sat down on the floor beside me without a word and put his arm around my shoulders. And we just stayed there for a while on the kitchen floor while the dog tried to lick the tears off my face. That was 3 months ago. I walk again now, though my pelvis still aches on cold mornings. I have not been back to the Millbrook Trail. I'm not ready for that yet, and I've decided not to rush it. Some things take the time they take. The property has been sold. I made that decision on my own, a month after the sentencing. I sold it, and I put the money away, and I try not to think about what it cost. People ask me sometimes how I feel about my sister. They want a clean answer. Do I hate her? Do I forgive her? Am I angry? Am I sad? The honest answer is that it changes by the hour. Some mornings I wake up and the grief is enormous, a missing limb kind of grief for the sister I thought I had. Some afternoons I feel nothing but rage, so clean and cold it scares me. Some nights I just feel tired. But here's the one thing that has stayed steady underneath all of it, the thing I come back to when everything else feels unsteady. My husband sat in a police station for questioning because of what she did, and when he walked back out and came to my hospital room, the first thing he did was ask me if I was okay. Not "I told you so." Not anger. Just "Are you okay?" That is the person I chose. And I chose right. Whatever else was taken from me, that truth belongs to me completely, and no one can push me off a ledge far enough to take it away. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for being here. It wasn't easy to tell, but it's the truth, and the truth is the only thing I know how to give you. Please leave a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And if you know someone who has ever been betrayed by someone they loved, share this with them. Sometimes it helps just to know you're not alone.